War does not always favor the most expensive weapon. Sometimes history is changed by something simple, overlooked and underestimated. In the chaos of World War II's Pacific Theater, where humidity destroyed machines and jungle shadows hid death at every step, American soldiers faced an enemy they could barely see. Japanese snipers were invisible, patient, and deadly. One bullet, one scream, and another American never stood up again. Commanders requested better scopes, heavier rifles, and advanced equipment. But what actually turned the tide was not a legendary sniper rifle. It was a cheap, almost forgotten firearm, issued without pride and with little expectation. And yet, in just 4 days, this rifle was responsible for silencing 11 Japanese snipers, changing morale, saving lives, and proving a brutal truth of war. Effectiveness matters more than reputation. This is the true story of the rifle no one believed in, and the men who made it deadly. The Pacific War was unlike anything American troops had experienced before. Dense jungles swallowed entire units. Rain-soaked ammunition, heat-warped metal. Every movement felt watched. Japanese snipers were masters of this environment. They climbed trees, hid in caves, and waited silently for hours, sometimes days. They did not fire wildly. They chose targets carefully. Radio operators, officers, medics. One sniper could freeze an entire platoon. American troops called them ghosts. You could hear the bullet, but never see the shooter. Every sniper neutralized meant dozens of lives saved. The U.S. Army entered the Pacific with confidence in its standard weapons. The M1 Garand was powerful, semi-automatic, and respected. But in jungle warfare, power was not enough. The Garand was loud. Its recoil was heavy. And its distinctive ping after ejecting the last clip gave away positions. Scoped rifles existed, but they were limited in number and often reserved for trained snipers. Many frontline units had no precision option at all. What they needed was silence, simplicity, and reliability. Instead, they got something cheap. The rifle in question was never meant to be legendary. It was inexpensive to produce, simple in design, and considered inferior by many soldiers who first held it. Some called it a training rifle. Others called it a last resort. But it had 3 things that mattered in jungle warfare: low recoil, acceptable accuracy, adaptability. It could be modified quickly. It didn't jam easily. And most importantly, it could be silenced effectively. With Japanese snipers inflicting daily casualties, one American unit decided to break doctrine. Instead of waiting for specialized sniper teams, they modified what they had. This cheap rifle was paired with a basic suppressor, crude by modern standards, but effective enough to mask the shooter's position in dense jungle terrain. The plan was simple: fight snipers with patience, not firepower. On the first day, the rifle proved its worth almost immediately. A Japanese sniper had been pinning down a supply route for hours. Every attempt to move resulted in fire. One American marksman crawled through mud, positioned himself carefully, and waited. When the sniper fired again, the sound gave away his tree. One suppressed shot followed. Noicho. No panic, just silence. The supply route reopened. Morale shifted instantly. Word spread quickly through the unit. Instead of fearing the jungle, soldiers began watching it. On the second day, 3 more snipers were eliminated. Each kill followed the same pattern. Wait, observe, 1 precise shot. Japanese snipers began relocating more frequently, unaware that their movements were now being tracked. The rifle's silence created confusion. Snipers died without knowing they were targeted. By the 3rd day, something remarkable happened. Japanese sniper fire decreased. Not because they were gone, but because they were afraid. They knew someone was hunting them, but couldn't identify where shots came from. That day, 4 snipers were eliminated. No American casualties. The rifle that no one respected was now the most requested weapon in the unit. The final day was the most dangerous. Japanese forces attempted coordinated sniper fire to regain control. But the American team was ready. They anticipated positions. They used patience instead of aggression. By nightfall, 11 confirmed sniper kills were recorded over 4 days. The jungle went quiet. The rifle succeeded because it matched the battlefield. It didn't rely on power. It relied on precision. It didn't announce itself. It disappeared after firing. In jungle warfare, silence is dominance. This cheap rifle delivered exactly that. The success forced commanders to reconsider weapon philosophy. Cost did not equal effectiveness. Simplicity did not mean weakness. Future Pacific operations increasingly emphasized suppressed weapons, marksman training, adaptability over prestige. A quiet revolution had begun. The rifle alone did not win the battle. The men who used it were disciplined, patient, and emotionally hardened. They watched friends die before ever firing their first shot. Each pull of the trigger carried weight. These were not glory kills. They were survival decisions. After the war, the rifle faded into obscurity. It was never celebrated, never immortalized in movies. But soldiers remembered it. Because it saved lives. Because it proved that sometimes, the most dangerous weapon is the one no one expects. To understand why this rifle's success mattered so much, you have to understand the enemy it was fighting. Japanese snipers were not ordinary marksmen. They were trained to disappear into the environment. Many spent weeks learning how to climb trees silently, carve firing holes inside trunks, and remain motionless even while insects crawled across their faces. Some tied themselves to branches to avoid falling asleep. Others hid inside spider holes dug just inches from American paths. They were taught one core principle: one shot, one kill. And after firing, they did not immediately flee. They waited. They observed panic. They watched medics rush in. Then they fired again. This tactic shattered morale faster than artillery ever could. American forces initially tried aggressive solutions. Machine gun bursts into trees, mortar fire into suspected areas, random suppression into jungle shadows. But jungle warfare punished noise. Every loud weapon revealed position. Every prolonged firefight attracted more enemy attention. Worse suppressive fire wasted ammunition and exhausted soldiers without guaranteeing results. The Japanese snipers simply waited it out. What was needed was precision, patience, and silence. Exactly what the cheap rifle provided. One of the most important effects of the rifle was not physical, it was mental. Japanese snipers were accustomed to hearing enemy shots. Loud rifles gave them time to move. Echoes warned them of danger. But this rifle broke that expectation. Shots came without warning. Snipers dropped without hearing the enemy fire. Trees that once felt safe became death traps. Fear does strange things to trained soldiers. Some Japanese snipers abandoned ideal positions too early. Others repositioned constantly, growing tired and careless. A few reportedly refused elevated positions entirely, choosing poor ground cover instead. The hunter had become the hunted. American units quickly adapted tactics around the rifle. Instead of moving in large groups, small observation teams were deployed. These teams did not engage immediately. They watched patterns. They identified repeated sniper behaviors. One sniper favored early morning shots. Another fired only after rain. One always targeted officers first. Patterns meant predictability. Predictability meant death. Each sniper neutralized reduced pressure on entire companies. The rifle forced its users to slow down. Unlike automatic weapons, there was no spray and pray. Every shot mattered. Ammunition was limited. Reloading was slow. This turned ordinary infantrymen into disciplined marksmen. They learned to breathe differently, to wait longer, to think before pulling the trigger. In a war defined by chaos, the rifle imposed calm. Despite its success, the rifle's use was emotionally heavy. These were not long-distance kills on open battlefields. These were intimate encounters, sometimes less than 100 meters away. The men behind the scope often saw faces. Sometimes they saw fear. Many soldiers later admitted these sniper engagements stayed with them, longer than large battles. Silence left room for thought. There was no cheering, no celebration, just another body swallowed by the jungle. Reports from the unit reached higher command. The numbers were undeniable. 11 confirmed sniper kills, 0 friendly casualties during the operation. Improved supply movement, improved morale. Commanders began quietly requesting similar setups. Not officially, not publicly, but quietly. Because sometimes innovation in war spreads faster through success than orders. Despite its effectiveness, the rifle was never glorified. It lacked dramatic firepower. It wasn't visually impressive. It didn't fit heroic war narratives. History prefers tanks, planes, and explosions. Silent success rarely makes headlines. After the war, newer weapons replaced it. Documents were archived. Stories faded. But in that jungle, for those 4 days, it was the most important weapon in the war. Years later, veterans spoke about the silence. How strange it felt when the sniper fire stopped. How unnerving peace could be. How survival sometimes depended on being quieter than death itself. They didn't remember the rifle's name. They remembered what it did. When the jungle finally went quiet, the change was immediate and visible. Patrols that once crawled now walked. Medics moved without fear of sudden shots. Radios stayed silent, not because communication failed, but because panic was gone. The absence of sniper fire felt unnatural. For days, soldiers kept expecting shots that never came. Every rustle still raised rifles. Every shadow was still watched. But the psychological pressure that had crushed morale was lifted. The cheap rifle didn't just remove snipers. It returned confidence. With sniper threats reduced, supply lines reopened fully. Food, ammunition, and medical supplies reached forward units without delay. Wounded soldiers were evacuated faster. Fatigue dropped. This created a chain reaction. Better supplies meant better health. Better health meant stronger resistance. Stronger resistance meant fewer losses, all triggered by a weapon almost no one respected. On the Japanese side, confusion spread quickly. Snipers who survived reported something terrifying. They were being killed without hearing the shot. This contradicted everything they were trained for. Japanese command attempted countermeasures, relocation orders, altered sniper routines, and even restrictions on solo sniper operations. But jungle communication was unreliable. Orders came late. Adaptation failed. The Americans had already adjusted faster. This moment exposed a critical weakness in rigid military thinking. Japanese sniper doctrine was effective until it wasn't. Once their expectations were broken, they struggled to adapt. Their tactics relied on the enemy reacting in predictable ways. The suppressed rifle removed predictability. War punishes inflexibility. No medals were awarded for this operation. No official doctrine manuals were rewritten overnight. But among soldiers, the lesson spread quietly. Adapt the tool to the environment. Ignore reputation. Trust results. Other units began experimenting with similar setups, not because they were ordered to, but because survival demanded it. This is how real military evolution happens. No medals were awarded for this operation. No official doctrine manuals were rewritten overnight. But among soldiers, the lesson spread quietly. Adapt the tool to the environment. Ignore reputation. Trust results. Other units began experimenting with similar setups, not because they were ordered to, but because survival demanded it. This is how real military evolution happens. Despite success, the emotional toll remained. Some soldiers later admitted they felt relief mixed with guilt. Snipers were enemies, but they were still men. Isolated, often young and fighting for survival just like them. Silence gave too much time to think. Many veterans said the quiet after a kill was harder than the firefight before it. No battlefield music. No shouting. Just jungle sounds returning slowly. The story of this rifle challenges a dangerous myth, that the best-equipped army always wins. That technology alone decides wars. In reality, war rewards what fits the moment. In the Pacific jungle, this rifle fit perfectly. Large battles dominate history books. Named operations, generals, and casualty numbers define narratives. Small, quiet victories disappear. But for the men who lived through it, this 4-day operation mattered more than entire campaigns, because it meant going home alive. The rifle did not change the war alone, but it changed their war. And sometimes that is enough. Its legacy lives not in museums, but in stories whispered between veterans, passed down slowly, imperfectly, and honestly. In war, silence is rarely peaceful. In the Pacific jungle, silence meant someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Someone was about to die. But after those 4 days, the silence changed. It was no longer the silence of fear. It became the silence of control. The jungle still breathed. Birds still moved. Leaves still fell. But the unseen threat was gone, and every soldier felt it. This story is not about a miracle weapon. It is about how desperation creates innovation, how survival strips away pride, how soldiers stop caring about what looks impressive and start caring about what works. That cheap rifle was never meant to be remembered, but it succeeded because it was used with intelligence, patience, and restraint. In war, those qualities matter more than steel. The rifle did not hunt alone. It was guided by men who learned to slow their breathing while death waited inches away. Men who stayed still when fear screamed to run. Men who accepted that survival sometimes means taking a life quietly. The true weapon was discipline. The rifle was only the tool. History teaches us to fear the loudest weapons, But sometimes the deadliest ones are barely heard. A rifle no one respected, a battlefield that demanded silence. 4 days that changed everything. No medals, no monuments, just lives saved. And stories almost forgotten, because in war power is not measured by price. It's measured by what survives. And in the jungle, silence was the final victory.